One summer moment can change a child's life. Through Toys for Tots Give and Go initiative, your support provides books, games, toys, and outdoor adventures that spark curiosity, creativity, and a love of nature. Whether it's fishing, learning a new sport, reading under a tree, or playing with friends, these moments build confidence and lifelong memories. For too many children, those moments never come. You can help change that this summer. Visit toysfortots.org. Toys for Tots, delivering hope beyond the holidays.
The James Golden Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This is a Fox News alert. AP is now projecting Democrat Javier Becerra will advance in California's gubernatorial primary race. The former California Attorney General and U.S. Secretary of HHS was considered an underdog until the departure of Eric Swalwell from the race. Let's bring in Fox News contributor Ray.
I hope the media looks at this election that's taking place in California, where they think it'll take 7 or 8 days to count the votes. Can you believe this? I mean, they spend all that money on the machines, the big voting machines. They think it's going to be 7 or 8 days before we know who won the election. But the numbers are looking strange because without any vote counting, the numbers dropped very precipitously for 2 Republicans that are doing well, that had been doing well. And I hope you're all watching it, because I'm watching it very closely.
That is one of the things we are watching, the disgraceful California system of elections once again on full display. Welcome to the Saturday Morning Extravaganza. I am James Golden, Bo Snerdley, with you here. If you'd like to be part of the program today, 800-848-9222. The riots and insurrection continue outside of Delaney Hall in New Jersey. You have this Senate candidate in Maine under fire with new attacks. Graham Plantner and Democrats, some of them are starting to peel away from him. Overseas, Henry Nowak case is being discussed, and the United States State Department has weighed in. It is a huge matter internationally. It goes to many of the things that we in this country are dealing with, a 2-tier justice system that favors illegal immigrants or immigrants, legal over American citizens, and in the case of the UK, over citizens of the United Kingdom. Huge issue. Also, what is happening in the marketplaces is something that we will discuss today. I'm looking forward to catching up with Princess Diana on the program. Mr. Bond will join us at 8:30. His name is really Thomas Lemming. He is a great resource when it comes to understanding the world of finance. And why are we going to speak with him? Many people are excited about the SpaceX IPO. And they see this, I missed Apple, I missed NVIDIA, I missed Tesla. I'm going to jump in on SpaceX. And I've had calls from people, I have other people looking at it. Well, we're going to talk about IPOs. And most people, including me, and I'm not saying most people, is most of us that are not in the financial game, so to speak, don't really understand, how do people get into these IPOs? How do you get in early? How do you discover? So all of those things we'll talk about with Thomas Lemming. Now, I also want to begin today with something else. 82 years ago, on this day, at this time, Americans were giving their lives in numbers that are astounding. June 6th was the year, 1944. As I just mentioned, 82 years. So if you were born on that day, you're you would be 82 years old today if you were fortunate enough to be living. It is most of the men who were at D-Day and women in support, most of the armed services, are dead now. And D-Day is quickly becoming a forgotten memory in the American consciousness, and it should never. The fate of the entire world, and that is not hyperbole, rested on what happened that day. The Supreme Allied Commander of the World War II, General Dwight D. Eisenhower, of course, who would later become president, gave the go-ahead for what is still the largest amphibious military operation in history, in the history of mankind. There has never been, and hasn't been since, anything like what happened on D-Day. As dawn was breaking, 18,000 British and American parachutists had already landed. 13,000. Think about that for a minute. 13,000 aircraft had been mobilized to provide air cover. 13,000 planes, each one of them piloted with crews. The numbers are amazing. By the day's end, over 155,000 troops, Americans, British, and Canadians, had stormed the beaches of Normandy and started their push inland. Before D-Day, Hitler and his armies and the Axis powers had been in control of almost all of Europe. They had taken it over. And sadly, the Europeans seems to have forgotten these days all of the lessons that were learned. And that alliance now between the United States, Britain, and to a lesser extent Canada, are now strained. It was a day of heroism that has been exemplified in movies ever since, but the loss of life was horrific. The bravery was incredible on the part of those fighting for the freedom not only of our country, but of the world. Now, I don't talk about D-Day every year, but this year, I don't know, for some reason, with all the turmoil going on in the world right now, it seemed very appropriate to do it. Many of us think, wow, these times we've never seen anything like it. And yeah, we haven't, in our generation, seen anything like some of the things we are seeing today. But our parents and our grandparents saw a world that was devastated almost beyond comprehension by conflict. What we are going through today, all the turmoil today, in comparison to what our parents and grandparents went through, doesn't hold a candle. Literally, freedom in the world could have been extinguished if Hitler, if the Axis powers had won that conflict. And as of D-Day, by the way, it wasn't a fait accompli. We did not know what the world then did not know what the outcome of that conflict would be. It was in doubt. The entire most of the entire world as we know it, over 70 different countries were involved in the theaters of where this war was taking place. It was truly a world war, the world at war, with the outcome uncertain. And if not for the United States of America, most of the free world right now would be enslaved. This country was the difference in keeping the light of freedom burning around the entire world, not just America. And so when you hear today people glibly, as you hear at Delaney Hall, calling people Nazis, or the Democrats calling Trump Hitler, or all of this, these people are demeaning and ignorant of what was truly at stake in World War II. When you hear people call people Nazis for, let's say, deporting people that have broken the law, these people are so ignorant and demeaning of what the Nazis, who the Nazis, what that evil truly was. The genocide that they brought to this planet should never be forgotten. The 13 million people that were singled out because they were Jews and treated to abominable horrors, that should not be forgotten. But it was not just Jews. It was anyone that did not agree with the Nazi philosophy. What they did, for instance, to homosexuals, what they did to people that were gypsies, how they considered the Slavic races inferior, and what they tried to do to them, the starvation that they spread across Europe and into Russia. These people were evil beyond belief. And the comparisons that are made now on an everyday basis, calling people Nazis, this, that, and the other, are just take away from the evil that had inflicted the entire world, and that evil should never be forgotten and should never be repeated. And that evil, by the way, was not the only evil of that century. When you look at then what took place in Russia after World War II with Stalin and his evil rule, and then you look at what happened in China as they threw off their history and embraced communism. And then you look at what happened around Southeast Asia going into the next 20, 30 years afterwards. Ladies and gentlemen, what happened to the world during those years, from 85, 86 years ago up to the 20th century, had to be the most horrific century in the history of mankind. If you just look at the numbers that were killed over ideology, be it the Nazi ideology, the communist ideology, we are looking at over 100, easily over 100 million people that were wiped off the face of the earth. It was an evil that is almost incomprehensible. And so on this January 6th D-Day, I would just like to give a heavenly salute to all of the Americans and the Canadians and the British and everyone else, because there were troops from all over the British Empire. There were troops from all over the world that had tried to join this fight to stop what had occurred. And their lives and their sacrifices should never be forgotten. Ever.
The James Golden Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The James Golden Show.
Entertaining and informative
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
James Golden, Saturday morning extravaganza. 800-848-9222 is, again, how you reach us. 800-848-9222. Let me go and just very quickly talk about what is happening at Delaney Hall. I think we have I sent an overnight clip in from Delaney Hall. Cut 14. Just hit that really quickly. Folks, it is a mess, it is chaos, and it has been. Go ahead, anytime, just hit it.
One time. May I please leave? May I please leave? One time.
This is some guy trying to get out.
You're holding slaves inside. Come back in.
Join us.
You're worried about work in the morning while you...
Quit your job. Quit your job. Quit your fucking job. It's not too late. Oh.
They are hitting cars coming out. They are swarming cars coming out. I saw one guy spit at one of the ICE officers down there. A journalist got knocked down. It was his own fault. A car was trying to get through. He's running up to the car as it's moving. It knocks him down, and now he's complaining, and they're all complaining. It is total bedlam and chaos out there, and this is the fault of the governor of New Jersey, Mickey, Cheryl. It is the fault of Ras Baraka, from Planet Newark, the mayor. These people refuse to allow the state police. They've withdrawn them, the local police, to have order out there. It is total bedlam, riotous behavior, more violence than we ever saw on January 6th. Now, Democrats are still whining, moaning, itching about January 6th like it's the worst thing that ever happened to America. Why is that? That is because Democrats themselves, elected Democrats, felt threatened. Every single day across America, Americans are not only threatened, they are murdered, they are raped, their children are harmed, in some cases by criminals that they have let out of jail through their policies, or illegal immigrants that they have let in through their policies. Every day, and they don't care. Now, outside of Delaney Hall, for over one solid week, we have seen the violence that is a total insurrection. And Democrats are not making an issue out of it. This is why I never want to hear about January 6th again. The actual leaders in the Democrat Party are not threatened. And so this is allowed to continue. What has to happen at some point is that the National Guard has to be called out. Since you have Democrats, this disgrace of a governor, Cheryl, and Ras Baraka won't get control of the situation. We're going to need the National Guard. 800-848-9222 is how you reach us. James Golden, Bo Snerdley, Saturday Morning Extravaganza continues. Don't go away.
The James Golden Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The James Golden Show.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
James Golden, Bo Snerdley with you here on Saturday morning. Yes, indeed, my friends. Oh, if you are in the New Jersey area, by the way, if you're from anywhere all over the country, we invite you to call in. Ever popular and growing program here in many markets across this beautiful United States of America. 800-848-9222 is how you reach us. We're going to take some calls pretty soon. But if you're in the New Jersey area, I had on one of my dear friends yesterday, who is conductor, Patrick Burns. He is just amazing. And he's taught me. He teaches me. I have to say, we meet up on Zoom sometimes, and he'll open up a score and he'll just teach me things about how scoring works and composition. He's just so wonderful to me. And they're having a performance in Bloomfield, New Jersey. There's a ticket price attached to it. It's not free, but it's with the Bloomfield Youth Band, which I understand is comprised of about 60 people. Orchestra minus the strings. But it's just going to be great. and that's happening tonight. You might want to look into it at the Bloomfield Middle School in New Jersey. It is his 40th anniversary of being a conductor. And so it's just amazing stuff there. So if you're in the Bloomfield area, check that out. Bloomfield Youth Band at the Bloomfield Middle School. There's a ticket price attached to it. Anyway, I want to get to some telephone calls. People are calling in unexpectedly for me. I hadn't expected anyone to really call in about D-Day, but quite a few people want to talk about it. John is calling in from Queens. Welcome. Good morning. How are you this morning?
All right, James, and I wanted to tell you one thing. I remember when you used to be with WWRL, right?
Oh, yes. That's where I started my radio career.
Yeah, and I know Jerry B. and Jeff Troy and Bobby J. and Jane Tillman Irving and George Flowers. But I want to tell you that my father was in the 4th Armored Division.
Your father was in the 4th Armored Division. Now, let me ask you a question, John. Did he talk about it with you?
Yeah, he talked about it with me, too, and he talked about it with my family.
And what is your remembrances of all of that, how it affected him, and how important do you think that was in not only his life, but of what actually took place on the ground this day? This day is a pivotal day in the history of the world. This date, June 6th.
Yeah, well, he talks about the Army, and we went to the reunions at Willaroma. You know the Willaroma, right?
I believe, yeah.
Yeah, it's a resort in Monticello, and we used to go all the time there.
Lovely. Well, look, I'm so glad you're calling, and those are fun people you brought up. I know everyone that you brought up from the WWRL crew. Jerry B., Jerry Bledsoe, is my cousin. That's how I got into business. I visited him at the radio station, and the first day I walked in there, fell in love with radio when I was 14 years old, and that's how it all began. So, thank you, John. I so appreciate your call. Let's go to Niagara County in New York. Kevin, welcome. You're upstate in Niagara County. How are you, Kevin?
Good morning, dear Bo Snerdley. Very good talking to you, good sir. And I want to say a special heartfelt thank you to the few remaining veterans from World War II. And my daddy, I'm saying like J.R. Ewing, my daddy actually, when we were a colony of Britain, when they exchanged bases for ships with the Brits, you know. He worked very closely with the U.S. Navy when they were there in the Caribbean back in the day. So I have a very close, heartfelt feeling for, World War II veterans and all veterans, as a matter of fact, you know. And do you know, Bo Snerdley, that one of the most top secret situations relating to what the Caribbean played, especially Trinidad, during World War II. Do you know when they did new inventions and stuff for submarines and so on? It was on the naval base in Chaguaramas, Trinidad, that they did all those submarine trials and tests and stuff. And do you know the song Rum and Coca-Cola by the Andrews Sisters?
Yeah, I know the song, yeah.
Yeah, well, Point Cumana is where the naval base was, and they only declassified that back in the 80s. Yeah. So
now let me just say this: I knew about, and this is what I meant earlier, folks. We can't grasp how truly big this war was in terms of the 70 theaters across the world that it was 70. We see these histories of World War II, and as much history as we know about it, there's so much more that we don't like the fact that you just brought up. I had never heard that before. And I have been reading, or if I had, I glanced over it doing the tremendous amount of reading. And there were several operations that were happening in the Caribbean. The Nazis were there trying, because they understood the significance of the Caribbean and their global schemes. And so there were confrontations in the Caribbean as well with the Nazis. Of course, part of the British Empire was there, as well as other European colonial nations. So this is it's just astounding. And I think we have all lost, many of the younger generation have no insight at all into how pivotal D-Day was, how true Nazism and the embrace of Nazism could have resulted in a world that freedom would have been totally extinguished. It's just astounding.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And as a matter of fact, there's a book by a former lieutenant commander from the British Navy, Trade and Coast Guard, called U-Boat Activity in the Caribbean. While they were watching the ports in other areas and so on, the real good crude oil for the war machine actually came from Trinidad. So a lot of tonnage was sunk in the Atlantic, right, that actually came out from that little island that played such a significant role, which I'm proud to say that I have a heritage with. So God bless them all. And as a non-lactating male, you heard about that one, right, in New York?
Yeah.
Right? So you talk about it later.
Yeah, New York State, folks, we covered the story during the week. New York State legislators, Democrats, now want to remove the word mother and father from everything legal. They say it is not inclusive enough. They want to refer to mothers as gestating parent and to fathers as non-gestating parents. This is just, it's the insanity of what it's like to be Democrats these days.
Yeah. World War II anniversary, let all the school kids stand 1 minute, just 1 minute of silence. I think they should make that federal law.
It would be wonderful if we could have an understanding and an honoring of our ancestors, especially those who fought to preserve our freedoms. I couldn't agree more. Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate the call. Let us quickly go to Melvin in the Bronx. Melvin, how are you?
Thank you for making my case. Put all the truth out there and let the chips fall where they're going to fall. What is Executive Order 9981, signed by President Harry Truman, July 26, 1948, because of Sergeant Isaac Woodard, a black Army veteran, after being discharged.
Yeah, first of all, hold on. Most people can't even understand what you're saying. Are you talking about Harry Truman's order regarding segregation in the armed forces?
We were to fight in World War II, but you talk about freedom. Freedom for whom? When the fight continued and so forth, and how that Sergeant Isaac would wind up in the jail cell because nature called. And of course, he wanted to use the restroom to relieve himself. He wound up in a jail cell, blind in both eyes, because the chief of police and one of the deputies beat him down physically in 1946. Now, what was the world fight for freedom for? Well, Hitler didn't trust the communists, and the United States don't trust the communists.
Let me tell you something, Melvin. Look, I understand the anger. My father, my uncles, and so many others fought in World War II overseas, in the European theater, in Korea, where they had more freedom than they had when they came back into the United States. Okay? I get it. But you know what? Our parents, for the most part, even though the Democrat Party kept them oppressed in America, even though the Democrat Party was still treating them as third-class citizens in America, still loved this country and still believed in the promise of America. And if they can do that, and if they did that with everything that was thrown at them, we should have an obligation to also love this country and further this country's interest in any way that we can to make better lives for our children and our progeny as they did. We can go on and complain about every injustice that was done to past generations, and there are many in every generation. And what's the point? What's the point? If you are not making life better for those that will follow you, as our parents did, without wavering, what is the point? Love you, Melvin. Thank you for the call. Appreciate it. James Golden, Snerdley.
The James Golden Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The James Golden Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
I want to get back to the telephones very quickly. People have been holding. Gene is calling in from Mount Vernon. Gene, how are you?
Fine, thank you. Bo, in 1944, my husband, who was born in 1932, was 11. I was born in 1937, so I was 6. And we really knew nothing about D-Day at all. And I now know and am reminded of June the 6th being that day that was D-Day. And in June of 1964, my husband and I were tourists for a year, 1964, in Ireland. And the month of June, we had purchased bicycles, and we went across Ireland from Dublin to County Kerry on our bicycles. And on June the 6th, we didn't really think about it, but we stayed at Dromaneer at a little place where we stayed overnight. And after we had supper, a TV set was on, and we saw a former President Dwight Eisenhower. And we wondered what was going on. And what we did see was that he had films of D-Day in Normandy in 1944, and all the poor soldiers that were trying to get out of the water and were dying couldn't get out of the landing craft. And, and then we realized that what D-Day really meant. And we've thought about that ever since. I'm going to be 89 this month, and my husband will be 94.
Wow. And so this is what folks, and look, they were alive, but children. And so understandably, you wouldn't be focused on it then. But what you talked about, those scenes, the actual footage was horrific. These men, so many of them never made it out of the landing craft. Those who made it were under so much intense fire on the beaches. The human effort that it took and the bravery that it took to take those fields at Normandy were astounding. And of course, if you have ever seen, as I did, Saving Private Ryan, I tell you, of all the war movies I've seen, that one blew me away. And I remember speaking to a friend of mine whose father was at D-Day. And he said when he and his father had went together when Private Ryan opened and saw the movie, it really affected his father. And his father said of watching the movie, that is exactly what it was like there. Those scenes in that opening of that movie showing the horror that took place on those beaches should always be remembered. And whatever people might think about Steven Spielberg and all the rest of the stuff, I think he did a great service to humanity with that movie, Saving Private Ryan, to show what the Allied troops went through on D-Day. Gene, thank you for the call. We appreciate it so much. Coming up in the next hour, folks, more of your telephone calls. If you want to continue, I'm surprised we're getting so many calls on this, frankly.
The James Golden Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The James Golden Show.
Entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
James, if there was a Republican combat veteran who had a Nazi tattoo, a Totenkopf tattoo, you wouldn't be so forgiving. What would you say to that?
That's true. I would say you're exactly right. If that person was a 4-time combat veteran, I'd say I'd never vote for him, or maybe it's her now. We have women in combat. But you know, you can't. But I wouldn't vote. I wouldn't vote for. I think the greatest danger we face right now is from Donald Trump.
James Carville with Jake Tapper on CNN. The person they're talking about is Graham Plattner, who is the Democrat frontrunner in the Senate race for Maine. That primary's coming up, but he looks like he's going to be the guy. And of course, every day new revelations are coming out about Mr. Plattner. This Totenkopf tattoo that he has. Let's explain that really clearly. The Nazis, we just got through talking about D-Day, or just were talking about D-Day, and the threat to the world, the entire world, that Nazism under Adolf Hitler, and it wasn't just Hitler, the Axis powers presented. One of the horrors that we had never seen before was what took place in the concentration camps. And to compare, Democrats are out comparing ICE detention centers to these things. It's just beyond ignorant and beyond hurtful to the men and women in law enforcement who are treating the people inside these detention centers with respect and with humanity in ways that the Nazis never did, never dreamed of. This tattoo that the Democrat likely nominee in Maine had was worn by the SS. Not just the SS, but the SS in concentration camps, where mass exterminations of human beings was the practice. And if you have never read, I have read Auschwitz. I have read some of the other books of what happened in some of these camps, like Treblinka. And it is almost beyond comprehension that human beings could treat human beings in this way. The mass genocide using the gas chambers, and that was only after other experiments in mass killing were tried by the Nazis, and what they did to try to eliminate 13 million people because they just wanted them off the planet. And this Democrat claims he didn't know what the tattoo was. And that begs incredulity. How can you, as a grown man in the armed forces, go into a tattoo shop, pick a tattoo, and not even inquire, what is this? What is this that I'm putting on my body? With a military history, not understanding the significance of putting on a military tattoo that was worn by the Nazis, who were intent and wore it proudly as their mark that they were involved in the mass extermination of Jews, of gypsies, and anyone else that the Nazis deemed to be unfit for human life. And it is astounding that the Democrats are still, many of them, it's astounding to me that Chuck Schumer, who is Jewish himself, actually endorsed this man, who wore on his body, until he had it covered up, a tattoo that was from the era, and a tattoo directly taken from the SS tattoo that was worn with those intent on exterminating Jewish people from the face of the earth. And yet you have Chuck Schumer endorsing him. I tell you, it's almost beyond belief. We have many people on the phones. I'd like to get to as many calls as we can, so I'm just going to ask all of you on the phones to please, and I say this with all due respect and gratefulness that you're waiting and that you're on hold. Just please get right to your point, because we want to try to squeeze in as many calls as we can. I want to talk about what's happening with this Graham Plantner guy. I would like to, at some point, get into this situation overseas that's happening with the Nowak murder and our response. It is a huge story. It is not going away. And then there are so many other things in the news. So I tell you what, at 8:30, at the half-hour mark on this one, we're going to talk with Mr. Bond. Tom Lamming is his real name. I call him Tom Bond, cousin of James Bond. But many people want to know about SpaceX and how can I get in on this IPO and all that stuff. So we're going to speak with him about that. I have so many questions about IPOs, too. You know, you hear all the time people get in on these IPOs, next thing they're rich. Well, how does a normal person get it that doesn't really have an investment background? How do you get into an IPO? Should you get into the IPO? What is all of that stuff? So we're going to talk about that with Tom Bond coming up. Let's do this. Let's take some calls right now. People have been waiting, and I'm going to move into some of these other stories. Folks, we have 60 pieces of audio in our lineup today. We're not going to get to all of them, but we've got some doozies in here for you. Let us go to Joe in Ronkonkoma, New York. Joe, thank you for holding. What's on your mind this morning?
Good morning, Bo. If anybody had to be a replacement of Phil Rush's shoes, I'm so glad it's you. With that said, my father-in-law was a World War II veteran. He lied about his age. It was always a question as to how old he was, because he lied about his age and enlisted at 17 years old. He ended up being a paratrooper. He had shrapnel in his hip, never tried to claim disability until much, much later in life. Now, he never, ever talked about his experiences at all. In the last weeks of his life, he was in a VA nursing home, and we were visiting with him, and it was a gorgeous starlit night, and we wheeled him outside in his wheelchair and said, "Grandpa, look at the sky. Look at how many stars you could see." And he said, "It reminds me when I jumped out of the airplane at night." Okay, now think about that, okay? 17, 18 years old, jumping out of an airplane at night with a parachute behind enemy lines, not knowing where you're going to land or whether you're even going to survive. This is a generation that you look at young people today, they don't even come close to the caliber of young people back then. And finally, we convinced him to try to, apply for some sort of disability. He was in his 80s, and it dragged on for years because he needed a hip replacement, and he couldn't get it. And it dragged on for years. One of the reasons was they couldn't find his records. So finally, he did get some sort of settlement. It might have been something like $2,000, which was nothing. And by that point, it was, he was too debilitated to even have a hip replacement. But like I said, and his story is not unique. That's the amazing thing,
Joe, I got chills listening to the story you told of your granddad, 17 years old, and I couldn't agree with you more about the caliber of those men, and let us not forget those women who served. We had so many women involved in the war effort, and their stories haven't really been told either, but fully. But yes, And what a great generation of human beings they were. And it is just astounding to hear these stories. And I'm glad you had a chance to spend time and hear that from his lips, his experience. That's just amazing, Joe.
And he actually passed, I think, about a week later. So it was a very, very moving experience for my wife and I to actually have him share that with us. So that's what I wanted to let you know.
Thank you. What a blessing. Thank you, Joe. It's so wonderful to hear from you. Thank you. Andrea is calling from Washington Township in New Jersey. Good morning, Andrea. What is on your mind this morning?
Good morning. I'll be 76 in September, and I had an opportunity to go to Paris last spring with my daughter for vacation, and I told her I could never, in good conscience, go to Paris without taking the trip to Normandy. And we both took a bus tour out of Paris. It was about a 3-hour drive, beautiful countryside, and we got to see the beaches of where these men stormed. I got to just relive in my mind, seeing everything. It was the most emotional day I've had in many years. And there's a beautiful museum there. The highlight of the tour was the American Cemetery. As far as the eye could see, there were buses, and people there, respectful, walking around the cemetery. It was just magnificent, and magnificent to see that people have not forgotten what happened. I studied a lot of American history in elementary, middle school, high school, college, and I have to say that I concur with everything your other people said today and what you've been saying about this greatest generation. I had uncles serve. My aunt was a WAC. She went over to England. She served. And it really is beyond words. So I encourage everyone who goes anywhere to France or close to take that bus tour. It was filled with Americans, and all of us were just very grateful for their sacrifice.
Thank you. That's beautiful, Andrea. Thank you for sharing that with us. Wow, folks, you all are blowing my mind this morning. Ina is calling in from Manhattan, New York. Good morning, Ina. How are you?
Good morning, Joe. Thank you. My father was in the Royal Air Force at D-Day, and he told us the story when he come home. I'm 82 years old. I was born in March. So when he left, I was like 2 months, so I didn't see him until I was 4 years old. And he came to New York and bought me an American doll girl with the matching dresses like me and everything. But he told us about D-Day. And then when I saw it on the TV, exactly the way he taught, and he saved a lot of Americans when he get to the water. The Americans was like, they thought they were the enemy, and they had to raise their flag. And he saved a lot of Americans in the water with their foot blown off and stuff like that.
Wow. Ina, God bless you, Ina. Thank you for sharing the story of your father, a veteran of D-Day, and amazing stories we're getting today, folks. James Golden.
The James Golden Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The James Golden Show.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
We have time for a few more voices, so we're going to get to them. Michael is calling in from Rockaway Beach in New York. Michael, it says here you want to talk about your uncle's experience with D-Day. What is that experience?
My Uncle Frank was a ranger, sergeant at D-Day, and he told me stories that Bo, I can't even go into, but it was unbelievable. It was towards the end of his life. He never spoke to it about it before, and he was dying of cancer. And then he said, I got to tell you this. I haven't told my kids, but I'm going to tell you the stories. I mean, he met Patton at the Battle of the Bulge, retreating, and Patton pulled out his pistol on my uncle and said, Sergeant, where do you think you're going? He says, we've been given orders to retreat. He says, I'm countermanding those orders. Get your ass behind my tanks, get your ass up that road and send me back trucks full of dog tags. But the reason for my call, though, is that my uncle was very, very angry at the French. He encountered a lot of collaborators with the Nazis and the British. He said every time we got into a war, it was precipitated by the British and French inaction to stop Hitler when he invaded the Rhine and the Tsar. And he also said to me that the thing that I recall right now is that when you think about what Trump's doing in Iran and stopping them from getting the bomb, and our European allies, again, are not cooperating with us, it harkens back to that malfeasance on the part of our allies back in the 1930s.
Whoa and whoa. You, my friend, have hit a few nails on the head here. And thank you for sharing that. That is an interesting story with Patton and your uncle. That is a mind-blowing story. And that is what Patton, you talk about the warrior ethos, that was General Patton. And that story you shared, I had never heard, of course, that story before. I'm sure that story should have made it into a movie somewhere about General Patton. But, man, you have just told us something that I'm sure most people have never, ever heard before that have studied World War II and have studied the life of General Patton. That is amazing. Thank you so much, Michael, for the call. Bobby, quickly, we have just a few seconds.
Yeah, my friend, his father's 100% German, and our government sent him to storm Normandy. He was a sniper, and when he was asked, he said he didn't mind shooting the German enemy. Now, he had a bad car accident after the war, and he daily medicated with alcohol. One day, my friend found him on the porch, speaking German, believing he was fighting the Nazis. But the father said he didn't know how to speak German.
Whoa.
And I'll just say, in June 13th of 42, because I'm on Long Island, the Nazis landed in the Hamptons. U-boat 202 landed off Amagansett in Operation Pistorius. And George Dasch, their leader, with 3 other uniformed Nazi men in a rubber raft, came ashore on a mission conceived by Adolf Hitler.
And what happened to them is most of us know what happened to them. It didn't end well for them. Bobby, thank you for the call. Folks, we'll be right back. We got Matt's pick of the day coming up. We have Mr. Bond coming up. Tom Bond, cousin of James Bond, talking about IPOs. More of your calls at 800-848-9222. Stay right where you are.
The James Golden Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The James Golden Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
It is time, ladies and gentlemen, to check in with Tom Bond. His real name, I call him Tom Bond. I met Tom on a cruise. And we were having dinner together, and Tom came in with this tuxedo, and I was like, damn, who was this guy? And I told him, yo, man, you look like James Bond or something in here. And Tom Bond, you must be his cousin. And Tom Bond and I have become a very good, dear friends. And Tom is in the finance business. His name is Thomas Lemming. And Thomas, welcome to the program again. You've been here before. And welcome back, Mr. Bond. Tom Lemming, how are you this morning?
I'm good. Thank you so much. And James, before we get started, we spoke earlier in the week about doing the show today. It didn't occur to me that it was June 6th at the time. But, our firm, Normandy Investment Advisors, is named after our firm's president's father landed on Utah Beach. And so we thought that'd be a great way to honor not just his effort, all the soldiers' efforts, and that kind of is in keeping with the theme of this show. But we can go on to SpaceX, but another Normandy connection.
No, I am so glad you brought that up. That is amazing. Tom, this impact that D-Day had on, if it were not for the effort of those brave Americans and the brave allies, British, Canadians, and allies from all over the world that helped liberate Europe, this world, freedom might well have been extinguished for many generations to come if it weren't for their efforts. And we owe them a debt.
And unfortunately, so many of those people are dying. I think 1,000 a day or something like that. There won't be many left. My dad fought with our firm's founder's dad later in the Battle of the Bulge, 6 months later after the D-Day landing. And there's very few of those people. Both our fathers have passed away. That it's special to have known somebody that actually experienced it and can tell you, how impactful it was on their lives and how it changed the future of the world.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Wow, Tom, that's just amazing. Folks, one of those spontaneous, cosmic connections. Let's talk about, yeah. All right. So SpaceX, I have friends, I want to get SpaceX stock. Everybody IPO, SpaceX is going to be huge. If we buy SpaceX and we get in on the IPO, why in just a little bit we'll be millionaires or we're going to do really well. And so I called you and I'm like, Tom, I'm going to get in the SpaceX thing. And okay, so where do we start? Do we start with the basic understanding of how people get into an initial public offering, and then specifically your thoughts on SpaceX?
Okay. I'll start by saying most IPOs don't work out. The history of IPOs, we all remember, and we can all say, gee, I wish I'd been in the Apple IPO or the Microsoft IPO or what have you. But survivor bias is real, and we know the survivors, and for every one of those companies, there's dozens that go to zero. And so it's not a slam dunk. But now let's talk about SpaceX. SpaceX is already the largest space launch vehicle company in the world. They've got like 85% market share. Most companies IPO as little companies that they may make it, they may not. Maybe you've heard of them, most not. This is already a mature company. It'll be the 7th largest company in the S&P 500 the day it goes public. So this one will have longevity. And then the question is the valuation appropriate to make money on it? But we can get to that later. If you want, let's talk about how could you buy it if you wanted to.
Okay, let's start there. If you wanted to, how could you do it?
Okay, it's not easy. I'm familiar certainly with the way, my guess is a lot of your listeners have an account at Charles Schwab. So I can speak to that one specifically, but the steps would be the same elsewhere, at Robinhood, at Fidelity, and so forth. This IPO is unique in that Musk wanted to give access to retail clients. Typically, investment professionals buy these big mutual fund companies, insurance companies, anyone that manages large sums of money is viewing IPOs at one time every day during the late 90s. But certainly every year you're looking at a number of IPOs to own. And this one's unique in that 30% of the stock is being carved out for retail. So if you go on your Schwab account and I can tell you the key clicks, you can just go up to trade, go down to, it'll open up a drop down, go down to IPOs, and you can fill out a form, a conditional offer to purchase, a COTP form. So you have to answer some questions about your investment knowledge and your relationship to people or firms in the financial industry. You could be blocked from doing it, or if you work at SpaceX or something like that. But it'll give you an opportunity to literally state how many shares do you want. My guess is already I think it's at least 2 times oversubscribed. I think that'll end up being larger. So if you say you want 500 shares, you may be lucky to get 100. It'll be rationed in that way. But you can simply go through those steps. Now, that is working this way for SpaceX because Elon Musk wanted individuals, people like the people listening to this program, to have access. But you'll need a brokerage account, and you're probably going to have to answer the questions. I'm not telling you how to answer the question, answer them truthfully, but you're probably going to have to say something about, you do have some experience and so forth. It does ask you, what is your level of investment experience? What is your level of risk taking? And so answer those questions truthfully. But that's the way the process works for this one. That is very unique. That's not the norm for the next IPO. Will not work that way. This one's special.
Okay, so now you've answered that, and this is very interesting, by the way, and I want to just come back to this after we talk about SpaceX valuation, because most people don't, for years, this IPO, and a lot of people are locked out. They hear about it after the fact, and they're like, well, how do these other people get to invest in these things and I can't, or I don't know how? So that's one thing I want to come back to. Now this issue of valuation. Okay, treat me like I'm a financial novice and I don't know anything about valuations and all that stuff. So when you talk about SpaceX and the valuation, explain this to me like I'm a novice. What is that about?
Okay, the first thing to recognize on SpaceX, the company is unprofitable. So even though it's by far the largest provider of launch vehicles, along with Starlink service. Some people are maybe listening to this program through their Starlink system. Most people are on cable or something like that, but you can get access to the internet through Starlink. They have, if you use Grok, which I do, that is part of SpaceX. It's their artificial intelligence agent. And so it's a huge company, but it is spending so much money to build these new technologies. It is unprofitable. It lost about $5 billion last year. And so the question is, what will this be worth? If you go through some gyrations and have your fingers crossed a little bit, but not totally unreasonable, you can project that maybe this company could earn, I've seen estimates of maybe $17 a share many years out into the future, 5-6 years out into the future. And so then you can put a multiple, how many times of that earnings would you pay for the stock? And so right now you're buying something that's almost like buying a biotech stock that doesn't even have a drug yet. They're working on it. It is not making money. So you're making a bet on the future. And if you work hard, you can make the case that this valuation may work out, but you're going to have to own the stock for a while. So this isn't a get-rich-quick scheme. Now, it's certainly not a scheme, but it's not a method to do that. But the stock could pop on, it's going to price next week, so it'll go public 1 week from yesterday, and we'll know for sure then. My guess is, given the demand, the fact that we're even talking about it, on this program, there's going to be a lot of people going through the key clicks at Schwab and Fidelity, and then, of course, institutions will want to own it. A lot of index funds will have to buy it because while it's not going to go in the S&P 500 right away, there was talk that it would. It'll go into other indices, and those institutions will have to buy it because it is a big, important company. But it's unprofitable. So it's going to be very volatile for probably for weeks and months, years to come.
Man. So if you're, let's say, and this is important, what you said about many years out. So if you have older investors, and let's just face facts, the older you get, the less certain you are that you're going to get older. So if you have older investors who think that this might be a good deal, they may want to take their own age and the wait time in consideration, and even at the share price. Does it make sense to wait that long to see a profit on the stock when you could have put your money somewhere else that could perhaps be more profitable? Am I looking at that the right way?
Yeah, no, you absolutely are. Yesterday, to me, was a little laboratory experiment as to what happens, because we really haven't talked about this, and maybe some of your listeners for sure know it, and maybe others don't. If you have money in the market, most people know yesterday was a disaster. Stocks, commodities, almost Bitcoin, almost everything collapsed. But there were certain things that were actually up yesterday, and up a lot. And what we saw yesterday is when all of a sudden people want to take risk off. They sold their Bitcoin, they sold their gold, the silver was down 8%, they sold stocks, they sold bonds. Almost everything was hit. But consumer staple stocks went up like 1.75%. REITs were up, real estate investment trusts were up. And so when we're I use that as kind of a guide to the future. If this market actually decides to, which I kind of in that camp, think that we are in some kind of bubble, that while AI is critical and it's changed my daily workflow, how I operate my life, it doesn't mean it's worth just any price. And so when those prices correct, just like they did for the internet stocks back starting in 2000, you quickly get a feel for what people are going to shift toward. And so yesterday, there was a huge shift towards staples, real estate investment trusts, small cap value stocks did fairly well. They were down, but not down nearly as much as the market. And so there are other places to go to be better positioned. And I think a lot of this mirrors what happened back in 99 and 2000 when the internet bubble burst. Today, we have another technology that's driving asset prices and excitement. And while that's all real and true, it doesn't mean everything's worth the price that it last traded for. And so we're going to probably go through some kind of correction on that.
Wow. Okay. Now I know you are not giving specific advice, and I appreciate that. And disclaimer, folks, we're not here to tell you what to do. I know we have to take a break. I'm getting to it. Thank you, Matt. But I want to just tell you people, Tom, if people want to reach out to your firm, can you just tell people how to get a hold of you, or if they want further financial advice? And I want you to just also, do you think before people make investments like these, they should speak to a financial professional, any qualified financial professional, so that they fully understand what they're doing?
Well, absolutely. Now, I am one, even though we run a firm that helps people with their investments. I'm definitely one that thinks that a lot of people can do this for themselves, but most people can't. So you need to do your own work. But certainly, if you're if you're perplexed or you've got a special situation, you do need to reach out to somebody because there's lots of other thought and vehicles that a firm can employ and help a client with to, kind of get them to where they're going, and just be a sounding board and say, does this even make sense? So, as I mentioned earlier, our firm is Normandy Investment Advisors, and they can either go to the website Normandy IA for investment advisors, normandyia.com, or the phone number is 913-914-1944, which is not an accident on those last four digits. So again, James, what a coincidence that we're talking on June 6th, but the 1944 is the last four digits of the phone number.
Oh, yeah.
Tells you a lot.
It tells you a lot. Tom, thank you for spending so much time and explaining all this with us. We appreciate you.
Great. Thank you, James.
The James Golden Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The James Golden Show.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
My friends, I would be remiss if I did not. We've been talking about it during the week, the weekly show. The cost of New York Knicks tickets. Somebody tried to embarrass President Trump because he's going to the game. By the way, Stephen A. Smith says he shouldn't come. And I was like, when did Stephen A. Smith buy the Knicks? It's like, I like Stephen A. Smith most of the time, but it's like, really, Stephen, be quiet. Anyway, I had people telling me, and these are people that like the Knicks, that they didn't think the Knicks were going to get past the whoever they're playing now, the San Antonio thing, yeah, whatever. And they keep winning. They've won 13 straight games. And New York is just like in a tizzy over the Knicks. And I remember, of course, as a kid, when the Knicks, I was in New York when the Knicks won, when they had the team with Clyde, with Walt Frazier and Earl Monroe, Earl the Pearl, and Willis Reed and all that stuff. So it's exciting, but the ticket prices, I mean, $20,000 to sit in the, folks, it's the top of the Madison Square Garden. Things look like ants when you're looking down below. And you're going to pay like $12,000 to $20,000 to sit up there? And the prices on the front row seats are just unbelievable. So they asked President Trump about it, and Trump is like, wow, what do you think when most average people can't afford to get most average people can't afford to go in regular season of some of these sporting events. What do you think about? And he said, well, they can watch it on TV. And now they're trying to treat it like an Antoinette moment. Let them eat cake. That's the way most people are watching it anyway, on TV. I tell you, this media never stops. We'll be back.
The James Golden Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The James Golden Show.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
I am conflicted about this country because I feel that it is, at this point, a failed experiment, quite frankly. I am also discouraged by how this country is viewed by the rest of the world.
You think it's already failed? You don't think it's? You think it's beyond redemption at this point?
I think at this point it is failing. It is a fail.
You don't think elections could bring it back? A change could bring it closer to the vision you have for it? I spoke to President
Clinton when he was here off camera, and he believes that it's going to take this country decades to recover from what has been done.
That was Sunny Hostin on The View. America's a failed experiment. She spoke to Bill Clinton, who says it's going to take decades to bring it. We're still trying to bring back the country decades after Bill Clinton and what he did. But anyway, I digress. Time for the voice of authority, the royal voice.
It's time for Radio Royalty with James Golden and America's Princess of Policy.
Time to check in with the nest, the goodness, the analysis, the wonderfulness that we all look forward to. Princess Diana is in the houseness with us this morning. Good morning to the failed experiment called America, according to the left. Freaking ABC actually puts that show on the air. It's. I believe America is a failed experiment. Does this woman know anything about world history? Anyway, good morning, Princess Diana.
Good morning. And I have to tell you, I have, thanks to your callers, dubbed you the Duke of Democracy and the Sledgehammer of Truth. And I just want to say, especially this morning, your retrospective on D-Day was so important and so needed, and I am on the same page with you, and I just so appreciate your words. Very important, and I also appreciate the callers who have chimed in and told of their own family experiences and knowledge of this, pivotal battle. And I just want to say that you have started us off on an important journey, and it needs to continue because this is not taught in school. The legacy of that battle and of World War II needs to be known. And we have the oral history, as you did with your father and my father and the callers who have talked about their family members. And this is, we talk about the greatest generation, who are the ones who actually fought the battle, but we are the, recipients of that legacy, and we need to keep this alive so that people cannot believe liars who say America is a failed experiment. So you are really part of this battle, and the fight continues, and a lot of it is honoring our heroes. And that's part of what's happening in D.C. One of the monuments and fountains that have been restored is the World War II Memorial. And it is just beautiful. I've seen the videos of it with the fountains and the people coming to honor those who gave all in World War II. And so that is one of the reasons that the left tears down statues. The left tears down monuments. The left has let monuments and fountains and all of these memorials to our history go into disrepair, and then they have their Antifa types who topple them and who wreck them. And so this is very significant and very symbolic, because a country needs to know its roots and its heroes, and that is what you have participated in this morning, and I just want to thank you for it.
Wow. Thank you. You know, when you talked about Antifa and what they're doing and tearing down the statues, it made me think of the Taliban. And that's, of course, what the Taliban has done across the world. They've gone in, and and for them, it's not just even, people that study religion, people that practice religion. One of the first things they do is come into a country and tear down everything that people honor to have a continuum with the history and culture and spirituality. And that's one of the things that they immediately attack first. The symbols that people use that are used to teach future generations about their past and about their lineage. So, yeah.
It's so true, because you and I still have the carried emotion from our parents, and many people still do. But once we are off the scene, it becomes something that people only read about. It becomes dead history. And that's why the oral tradition is so important, what you're doing, of telling the stories from our own experience of our own family members, how this was the heart and soul of America. This had nothing to do with quote unquote politics or the politics of today, although I have to say the fight continues in that same battle. And you referenced the Democrat likely nominee. Now, the primary is going to be June 9th this week, and Graham Plattner, who is likely to win as the Democrat nominee in the state of Maine. And so, to me, this is really an important link to bring to what happened on June 6th in 1944, who we were fighting, what the results were, the tyranny and the end of freedom for so many people in Europe, and what it cost to free people from that tyranny, from the twisted cross. And now we have a nominee likely who had tattooed on his skin what was called the Totenkopf, as you said, linked to the SS guards. And in this week's New York Times, that was one of the revelations of a former girlfriend of Graham Plattner, that he called it my Totenkopf. And she said he would joke about it being a Nazi tattoo. And that this is what the New York Times reported, that his unit deliberately selected that tattoo because it was relevant to their military unit, and how it was like a death unit. They were killers, and they saw the parallel between their unit and the Nazi Schutzstaffel, the SS unit, that used that same skull and crossbones image. So this was revealed this week, that the likely Democrat nominee deliberately chose that symbol and was proud of it until less than a year ago, where he supposedly discovered what its meaning was. He knew his meaning, and he told his girlfriend that he called it my Totenkopf. He was proud of it. And so this is why we have to tell the story of what happened, what it cost to liberate the world from this vile ideology, as you called it, this evil, and how it is basically being embraced by the Democrat Party and excused. And it's like, oh, he was, basically just went through a dark period. Okay, well, he's bringing his dark period into the Democrat Party. And that is being embraced by the Democrat Party because they are supporting it. Similarly, I have to say, on June 2nd, the Democrats voted for Adam Hamawai in New Jersey's 12th district. And he was born in Egypt. He was a translator and a defense witness for the blind sheikh in the 1993 World Trade Center bombing trial. The terror mastermind, Omar Abdel Rahman, who was a radical imam, was the mastermind of the first bombing and also helped inspire 9/11 in 2001. And this guy who has won the Democrat nomination has basically is going to probably win in New Jersey 12. And he has also close ties to jihadists. And one of his supporters basically said America deserved 9/11. And I just want to point out that Todd Beamer, the hero of 9/11, if you recall, he was one of the passengers in United Flight 93 who tried to storm the cockpit to take away control from the terrorists in that airplane. And they were able to steer it away from the likely goal, which was the U.S. Capitol or the White House, and unfortunately crashed in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Todd Beamer's remains were taken to his final resting place in Cranberry, New Jersey, which is in the same district that this guy just won. So I think that is an important thing to recognize the past connection with the present and the legacy that we have to keep alive to remind people what happened in World War II, what happened on D-Day, and what happened in 9/11 and who our enemy is. We cannot let people forget. And that is the only thing that can help is we tell this story, because schools will not. No one remembers Todd Beamer in schools, the guy who basically coined the term "let's roll." We only know that because he was on an open line with an operator that he was able to get hold of on his cell phone. He was trying to get through to his wife, couldn't, got through to a GTE operator who he asked to say the Lord's Prayer with him in Psalm 23. And he and a few other passengers had devised a plan to storm the cockpit and try and take over control. And the last words that the operator heard him say were, "Let's roll." And he did not make it, but his legacy was the same legacy of fighting evil, fighting tyranny of those heroes in World War II. It is an American legacy we have to be proud of, and we have to repeat it, and we have to keep it alive.
I want to add one thing to it, not my words. I want to go to a segment on CNN and listen to Batya Ungar Sargon, cut 12, Matt, and this is what she had to say about the nominee, the likely Democrat nominee for senator from Maine.
A new indictment returned by a grand jury in the Justice Department's case against the
That is not it. I'm looking for Batya Ungar Sargon on her grandfather's family. We can find it. We'll go to a break in the meantime. This is James Golden. Snerdley, let's head to a break here. We'll get it, because this is important.
The James Golden Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The James Golden Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
I'll just say my grandfather's whole family was murdered in the Sobibor concentration camp. Grant Plattner doesn't just have a Nazi tattoo. For 18 years, he had a tattoo of the concentration camp guards on his chest, and he knew what it was. He knew what it was. And to hear people compare that to anything else in the public sphere in America is insane, and it is insanely offensive. These people who are defending him called me and every other MAGA person a Nazi for 10 years because we voted for someone who we thought would improve the lives of working class Americans. And now they are lining up and defending a guy who had a Nazi tattoo, which he knew about, for 18 years. It is so insane to act like anything Donald Trump did was anywhere close to having a Totenkopf on his chest for 18 years. This guy is a Nazi, and Democrats are lining up behind him because they think he can win.
That was Badia Ungar Sargon on CNN, whose grandparents were killed at the Sobibor concentration camp. Now, a lot of people don't even understand when you talk about concentration camps. The Nazis had over 70 active concentration camps. We've heard of the biggest ones. The Auschwitz, the Treblinkas. This camp where Badia Sargon's grandparents were exterminated. But these camps were all over Europe, not just in Poland, not just in Germany. They had spread across the entire continent of Europe where the Nazis had taken over. And they were exterminating people on a daily basis in the most horrendous of ways. The man running for the United States Senate out of Maine is bearing the emblem on his body of the prison guards from the Nazi SS who were responsible for the daily extermination of human beings that amounted to be millions of people. Princess Diana is with us. Princess, I don't know. I'm beside myself here. It's unbelievable.
Yes, but let me tell you, one of the things that, these things have to be said out loud. And one of the temptations on our side, when we look at all of the corruption, all of the, misuse of power, we look at what's happening in California with the election obviously being stolen right before our eyes. And the temptation on all of us is say, what's the use? What's the point? There's nothing that can be done. And we need to buck up because we have to remember the sayings, let's roll, which was Todd Beamer's inspirational let's go, and also the order given by Eisenhower when he decided to launch the D-Day invasion was, okay, we'll go. And so that has to be our attitude. We cannot lose heart. We cannot look at the corruption, which is really deep, and basically say, what's the point? We've got to think about and teach our kids about, as Reagan talked about, the U.S. Army Rangers at Puente Hawk. And so they had to climb a 328-foot vertical cliff. They had grappling hooks that they borrowed from the London Fire Department. And so they were, shot at by the big German guns. They were picked off one by one, but some of them made it, and they knocked out the guns. It was an impossible task, but they did it anyway. And that is the courage that is our legacy as Americans. And so we need to basically take that same attitude when we see things that are discouraging, and corruption is discouraging. And we have to realize our legacy as Americans. We will fight it. We know what we're looking at. We know what evil is, and we also know what goodness is and bravery is. And so that, to me, is what we have to remember going into these fights. We have to say out loud, we have to call it what it is, and we have to fight it, because truth can win and will, with God's help. And as we always say, in God we trust. That is the ultimate power that we have.
And I will tell you something. You mentioned the California elections, which we have not talked about. I saw an AP headline. Yes, this is. I'm paraphrasing. I don't have it in front of me. It's like, yes, this is happening, and the vote's taking a month or whatever. But that doesn't mean it's rigged. And I said to myself, it doesn't mean it's rigged. California's jungle primary was the rigging. That's when they decided to rig it. So in their minds, Republicans could never win again in the state of California. So, I mean, this is just not... Princess, hold on. We'll be back. I want to talk about that and also what's going on in the UK. Don't go away.
The James Golden Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The James Golden Show.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
James Golden, Snerdley, Princess Diana is here. Princess, we have some calls, but before we get to that, I want to talk briefly about a few things. Hey, I'm sure you've been following this Henry Nowak case in across the pond. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I agree with the J.D. Vance. I mean, he basically, I have a quote from him. Henry Nowak died the same way a civilization dies, abandoned, handcuffed by authorities who neither trusted nor cared for him, and accused of hate crimes he did not commit. Each time a life like his is lost, the proper response, the only response, is righteous anger. Vance said that Novak would be alive today if the last few generations of European elites had stood their ground against the politics of self-hatred and the mass invasion of migrants, many of whom despise the West and the people who love it. And, of course, in response, the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, basically complained about people trying to interfere in our democracy in England, in Great Britain. So there's not going to be any change in attitude by the elites that JD talked about.
Now, you mentioned Keir Starmer. Folks, for those of you that don't know, let me just give you the bullet points on this, and I've been talking about it, but briefly. Henry Nowak, this happened in 2025. White 18-year-old UK citizen was killed by a Sikh UK citizen, which is highly unusual. Sikhs do not commit a high rate of crimes. I'm just saying. But it's unusual. This guy did not just have a Sikh ceremonial dagger, had a sword. And his uncle was seen with a sword, which is just unusual. But to the point, he was attacked and stabbed multiple times. The calls into the police were from the guy saying, oh, he was racist. He said something racist to me. The police ignored his stab wounds, cuffed him up. While he was on the ground, he died. All of this was, in my opinion, covered up because the body cam footage of all this a year later is released. And that is what has started all of this. Now, I want to go back to something Princess Diana said with Keir Starmer complaining that Elon Musk has commented on it. Our State Department has now commented on it, and the Vice President and Graham and Keir Starmer has his undies in a twist. Keir Starmer took a knee on the George Floyd incident. Right. And the Brits over there in the Labour Party continually reacted to George Floyd and made it an issue in the UK, including protest marches in the UK. And on this one now, in fact, cut 57. Here, Keir Starmer, back in the day with the George Floyd deal.
Can I start by expressing shock and anger at the death of George Floyd? This has shone a light on racism and hatred experienced by many in the US and beyond. I'm surprised the Prime Minister hasn't said anything about this yet, but I do hope that next time he speaks to President Trump, he will convey to him the UK's abhorrence about his response to the events.
And the image, I think, will stick with me, and I'm sure it will stick with many, many people. That combination of a man talking about his last breath in that way and an officer apparently unmoved completely by that. I don't
like you.
Now, he could be talking about his own police over there, by the way. But you heard this quote, and Keir Starmer was urging people to rise up against Donald Trump and express their abhorrence with Trump. But yet we're not supposed to express our abhorrence to what has happened in the UK.
Yes, and don't forget that Starmer sent over 100 party members from Labor during the 2020 elections, in such to the point that Trump's presidential campaign filed a formal legal complaint because they not only said things, they got physically involved to come over and interfere in our election.
So, I mean, this is quite amazing. All right, I'm trying to cover a lot of ground here quickly, and we have telephone calls. You mentioned the California elections, which we understand it might be more weeks before it goes on. We've already got the Democrat safely installed now as the first one that will face Javier Becerra. And it looks like Tim Steyer, the numbers are pulling up for him. It looks like Platt, the numbers are going down. Spencer Pratt. This is as we predicted.
Yeah.
This is exactly what we predicted. And cut one, here's Gavin Newsom months ago with this one.
We all have agencies. We can shape the future. There's still a lot. Look, I've said this before, so I'll repeat it. I don't anticipate this need to be the case, but there is a break the glass scenario, and there's many people that have a deep understanding of what it would look like if Democrats were locked out, and we're going to do everything to make sure that doesn't happen. I'll leave it at that.
Well, they're breaking the glass. We're seeing it as publicly. It is before everybody's eyes, which is really interesting because I think that they do not realize the national scrutiny that this particular election is having, because there were actually Republicans who, I know, won those elections. I mean, they will not ultimately prevail, but they won the elections, and so therefore there's been a lot of interest. So their assumption that they can get away with it, as they always have, is, I think, unfounded. And as you know, the Department of Justice is now investigating, in assisting U.S. attorneys personally to look things over, and the investigation is continuing. I do not think it's going to be happening without any response. The thing to remember now, if you remember, in 2021, Gavin Newsom faced a recall election. The results were known 15 minutes after the polls closed.
Right.
Amazing. And also Prop 50, which just happened in November, which was the gerrymandering amendment, that was also called at 8:01, a minute after the polls closed. So California has the capacity, when the vote goes the right way, in their view, to have the votes counted very quickly. It's only when this happens, we know that the vote went against what they wanted, which is why they had to break the glass.
Yeah. Well, I think they're going to get away with it. I think they always get away. And I'm not saying this, by the way, out of despair. I'm saying I think they're going to get away with it. But their getting away with it is only a short-term thing.
Well, don't
as you say,
the Supreme Court decision is coming out very soon on whether or not Election Day means one day, whether you can keep counting after Election Day. And so that would not affect this particular election. It won't affect, it's only federal elections, but it will be a change. If that happens, that's going to affect elections going forward everywhere in national elections for House, Senate, and President. So this is, a temporary setback. It's visible. It's in front of our eyes. And I think that it is something we need to call out and not just say, oh, well, it's California. Oh, yes, they cheated, and laugh knowingly, like we laugh about Chicago elections. I think there needs to be absolutely, every time people talk about elections, we need to remind people of what happened in front of our faces in this particular one. Never forget it.
Yes. Now, quickly, your thoughts on what's the riots that are occurring nightly at Delaney Hall, the insurrection that has now spread for almost 2 weeks. You still have people blocking cars. It is the most horrendous scenes out there.
Yeah.
And I hate to say this, I really do. I wonder, and I hate to even say this, but I seriously wonder if there are not Democrats hoping for a loss of life incident like happened in Minneapolis so that they can run on that in the midterm elections?
I think that is their plan. I think it is explicit. I think they want to be, have such outrageous behavior because they're being unleashed. Their worst militants are being unleashed deliberately, because law enforcement in New Jersey has stepped aside and allowed it to happen. And so that is what they're hoping, that the National Guard will be sent in, that there will be continued deliberate provocation, and it will result in some kind of violence and martyrdom. I think that is their only play that they have for November. I think they realize that they're not going to be victorious in the House or the Senate. And so this is all they have. They want to motivate their voters, and their voters are not motivated right now.
During the week, I wonder if I can have your time. I want to talk about, and I haven't spent any time yet, talking about the Scott Pelley situation, CBS, 60 Minutes, journalism, the fate of journalism. Maybe during the week we can find a little while to talk about that.
I would love that. That will be very entertaining. Let's do it.
Okay. Meanwhile, telephones. Let us go to Boston, Massachusetts. If you're on hold, thank you for your patience. We got limited time left, so I'm just going to ask everybody to make your points quickly. We can't have extended discussions, but I so appreciate you on hold. Jim is calling in from Boston, Massachusetts. Good morning, Jim. How are you?
I'm very well today. And hello, Princess Sky.
Hello.
I really enjoyed talking to you. I have this little quote from Hitler, and it says, "I have sent my death's heads unit to the east with the order to kill without mercy men, women, and children of the Polish race or language. Only in such a way shall we win the Lebensraum that we need." I want to correct a misconception about Death's Head. They didn't run concentration camps. They ran death camps. They were the unsuffered. They were the ones. Holocaust.
Jim, I hear you. And you just made, these are not concentration camps. They were death camps. I'm going to leave it there. Thank you. They were camps where the worst evils in humanity took place. Death camps. And wearing the emblem of the murderers is a Democrat running for the Senate in Maine. Jeff, in the Bronx, New York, you're up next.
Well, back about 15 years ago, I used to pitch these IPOs for a living, and sometimes we got equity in the office, sometimes we didn't. And we'd slap because anyhow, you have to have, I think it was like $200,000 of income and $1 million asset. That can't include your house, your net worth. So you have to be accredited in order to participate in an IPO, is your point? You have to be an accredited investor, sir. Yes.
Thank you for that. And this is why I urged people earlier on to check in with whoever your financial advisor is. And if you don't, find a financial advisor that is worthy of, and do your research on that.
The James Golden Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The James Golden Show.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
I just want to say this. The reason that Democrats, socialists, and all these types, especially elected Democrats, still moan and groan about January 6th is because they personally felt threatened. Now, every day across America, regular Americans are threatened, and they don't care. Whether it's repeat offenders they let out of jail, whether it's crime from people that don't even belong in the country. And look at the riots going on in New Jersey every night, an insurrection, and they don't care. That's why I don't want to hear anything else about January 6th from these people.
Thanks for listening to The James Golden Show. You can hear The James Golden Show Saturday mornings at 7. If you like the podcast, Share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
Get ready, Staten Island. It's time to celebrate 5 years of Ferry Hawks baseball.
This week, come out to the ballpark as the Ferry Hawks welcome in the Hagerstown Flying Boxcars at Staten Island University Hospital Community Park for a homestand on June 10th. For a 5-game series as the Ferry Hawks welcome in the Hagerstown Flying Boxcars. Individual game tickets start at just $12.
Visit ferryhawks.com now to lock in your seats.